And then Michael goes to the inside, tries to block the line in 130 up.
Oh my word!
And Alonso having none of it, straight around the outside.
180 miles an hour around the outside of the 130R corner. I've never seen anything like it.
Lead. Grosjean just in front of Alonso, who pulls out alongside. He's going to try and go round the outside, and they did touch, but Alonso has squeezed his way through. Round the outside, there goes Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton wheel to wheel. It's Rosberg from Vettel, and now Alonso slots into third place.
And Fernando Alonso wins his first Grand Prix, and he becomes the youngest man ever to win a Formula One Grand Prix. He's not going to be locked to break that. Amazing defensive driving by Fernando Alonso. His hand is out of the cockpit.
In front of his adoring Spanish fans, can now see the checkered flag and comes home to win the Grand Prix of Europe.
Fernando Alonso, considered by some to be the most talented racing driver in history, and it's an opinion that can be backed. 2 world championships in Formula 1, consistently putting underperforming cars where they don't belong, and winning another Series 2 like the World Endurance Championship, which included winning the 24 Hours of Le Mans twice. But he also has a reputation for creating a toxic environment and has had big moments of controversy throughout his career. So in this video I'll be telling the full story of Fernando Alonso's career up to when I'm recording this video in January 2021, as he prepares to make his Formula 1 comeback with the Alpine F1 team, who he has raced for twice before when they were known as Renault. Before we get into it, I'd really appreciate if you gave this video a like and subscribe if you do enjoy it, but that's enough waffling, let's get into it. Fernando Alonso Diaz was born on the 29th of July 1981 in Oviedo, a Spanish city in northern Spain. He began go-karting at the age of 3 when his dad, a mineshaft explosive mechanic but also an amateur kart driver, built Fernando's sister Lorena a go-kart, wanting it to run through the family, but she wasn't interested, so the car went to Fernando. His father also rejected an offer from Celta Vigo Football Club to be a goalkeeper. So in an alternate reality, Fernando could have been a footballer and his sister could have been the racing driver. The family were from a working class background and they couldn't afford to buy rain tyres for Fernando's car, meaning he just had to adapt to slick tyres in the wet. He won his first race at the age of 7 and his first championships in 1988 and 1989 and progressed into the cadet class in 1990. However, the costs were rising and it was becoming more of a struggle to race, but the family were able to find sponsorship money to enable Fernando to not just carry on racing in Spain but also all around Europe. Between 1990 and 1995 he won 5 more karting championships, and when he did go and race in the CIK European Championship in 1997 he finished in 2nd place with 9 wins throughout the season. He would move into cars at 17 years old, where he would win the Euro Open in 1999 and finished 4th in the Formula 3000 Championship in 2000. Formula 3000 was the predecessor of GP2 and what we now know as Formula 2. For 2001, Alonso would make his Formula 1 debut with the ever popular Minardi team. He was their test and reserve driver the year before, but now would be his chance in the biggest motorsport series in the world. Sort of. You see, Minardi weren't exactly a competitive bunch, as in they didn't score a single point all season, with Alonso's best result being a 10th place at the German Grand Prix. But he did show his potential multiple times and signed for Renault in 2002 as their test driver, which meant he had to have a year on the sidelines. This was to familiarise himself with the team and help him improve for when he stepped into the car as part of their lineup. And in 2003 he got that chance. He got the call to race for Renault and broke the records for youngest pole sitter at the 2nd race of the season in Malaysia, and would break Bruce McLaren's record for the youngest winner in the history of the sport at the Hungarian Grand Prix. Fernando finished 6th in the championship with 55 points and 4 podium finishes, a promising start to his Renault career, but there was much more to come. 2004 was an improvement in the standings as he would finish 4th, but due to the dominance of Michael Schumacher and Ferrari that season with the F2004, he didn't win a race, but he did take a pole position at the French Grand Prix and took 4 podium finishes once again. And so we arrive at the 2005 season, the last season of the V10 engines, where he did alright, you could say. Ferrari dropped off massively and there was a new rule change which meant tyres could not be changed during the race unless it was an emergency. This favoured the cars running Michelin tyres, apart from the US Grand Prix that year, we won't talk about that. So Fernando Alonso and Kimi Raikkonen would battle it out for the championship. The McLaren MP420 was the fastest car, but it was also about as reliable as a Rover SD1. So with the advantage in reliability, Fernando Alonso was able to win 7 races, grab 6 pole positions and 14 podium finishes, ending the season with 133 points, and he became at the time the youngest ever world champion, eclipsing Emerson Fittipaldi's long-standing record. For 2006, the first season with the V8 engines, Alonso's title rival was Michael Schumacher, as Ferrari got back to winning ways, but Fernando during the first half of the season was on another level, winning 6 out of the first 9 races, and the races he didn't win, he finished second. But it wasn't all over yet. A mid-season rule change which banned Renault's genius tune mass damper device and Ferrari making big developments with their 248 F1 car meant that Michael was back in the fight, and when F1 arrived in Japan, they were level on points. Schumacher was leading the race at Suzuka until he had an engine failure, leading to the retirement and allowed Alonso to take the win. He needed just 1 point at the final race in Brazil to win his second world title, and he would finish second, getting 8 points, becoming the youngest ever double world champion in Formula 1 history. This would also be Alonso's last year in his first stint at Renault, as he moved to McLaren for the 2007 season, after he and Ron Dennis met up in Japan in secret and discussed making the move possible. It all looked perfect for Fernando, as he would be partnered up with some rookie from Stevenage called, what's his name? I can't remember his name, I think it's like Lewis Hamilton, correct me if I'm wrong, but jokes aside, it was looking very, very good for a 3rd consecutive world title. But it didn't quite go that way, did it? Firstly, Hamilton wasn't just some rookie, as we know. He was actually ridiculously good in his first season, only losing the world title because of whatever the hell China was. Secondly, the Spygate scandal that was the main story of the 2007 season, where Ferrari chief mechanic Nigel Stepney gave McLaren chief designer Mike Coughlin, I think that's how you say it, 800 pages of confidential information about Ferrari's F2007 car, which he would go on to use in the development of the McLaren, and that would lead to McLaren being fined $100 million, and they had all their Constructors' Championship points taken away and they couldn't score anymore. This was, and I think it still is to this day, the biggest punishment in sporting history. And finally, the big fallout between Alonso and McLaren. Fernando believed that they were prioritising Lewis and wanted him to become the world champion, even though in Alonso's contract he was the #1. The tipping point of all of this came at Hungary, where in qualifying Hamilton was ordered to let Alonso through, but he refused, so when they both came into the pits, Alonso waited in his box 10 seconds after he was told to go, holding Hamilton up and not allowing him to set a final lap time. All of this tension led to Alonso and McLaren agreeing to terminate the contract, and he would go back to Renault for the 2008 season. Renault were a lot less competitive after Michelin left Formula 1, and they had to use Bridgestone tyres like everyone else, and in the first 7 races, Alonso only scored 9 points. However, this was mainly down to a lack of power from the Renault engine, and as the season went on, the car did start to improve. He would score more points in the final 5 races than any other driver, with 43, and this included winning the Singapore and Japanese Grand Prix. But there was way more to the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix. On lap 14 of 61, Alonso's teammate Nelson Piquet Jr. was ordered to deliberately crash in order to bring out a safety car, which meant that Alonso could come into the pits and fill up with fuel that would go to the end of the race, as he started with very little fuel on board. After Felipe Massa's pit stop disaster, which arguably cost him the 2008 World Championship, Fernando cruised to victory from 15th on the grid. The whole race fixing scenario, dubbed Crashgate, was made public after the 2009 Hungarian Grand Prix, where Piquet said after he'd been dropped by Renault that it was all deliberate and to help benefit Alonso's race. The team's punishment was a 2-year suspended disqualification, and team boss Flavio Briatore was banned from all FIA sanctioned events for life, with Pat Simmons receiving a 5-year ban, but both these punishments were overturned. To this day, Alonso still says he had no idea about the plan, and he still considers that race a proper victory. 2009 saw Alonso's last season for Renault in his second stint for the team, and the car was uncompetitive due to a lack of the double diffuser, and the car itself was just outright slow. The highlight of his season was taking pole at Hungary, but he had to retire after leading due to an incorrectly fitted right front wheel. But in that year, Fernando would agree to drive for Ferrari for the 2011 season, but this was moved forward a year to 2010 after Kimi Raikkonen was released from his contract. Alonso would now drive for the most famous team in Formula 1, and the goal was to take the World Championship back to Maranello. The 2010 season couldn't have started started any better, with Alonso taking the first win of the season in Bahrain after an issue for Sebastian Vettel gifted him the win. And it was a Ferrari one too as well, but he wouldn't win again until the German Grand Prix at Hockenheim, where even more controversy followed. Massa led the majority of the race, but Ferrari wanted him to let Alonso through for the championship, and team orders were banned after Rubens Barrichello let Michael Schumacher through at the final moments of the Austrian Grand Prix in 2002. So they used a coded message. What was this code? Something very secret and discreet? Well, not really.
Fernando is faster than you. Can you confirm you understood that message?
Ferrari would be fined $100,000 for this infringement, so basically loose change for them, but Alonso is now firmly in the running for the world title. Back-to-back wins at Ferrari's home race at Monza and beating Sebastian Vettel by just under 0.3 of a second in the Singapore Grand Prix added more promise. And 2 races later for the inaugural race at Korea, both Mark Webber and Sebastian Vettel failed to finish, with Webber crashing out and Vettel retiring with yet another mechanical issue while leading. And with all of this, Alonso took the lead of the championship with just 2 rounds to go. A third place finish at Brazil behind the 2 Red Bull cars saw him enter the final round 8 points ahead of Webber, 16 points ahead of Vettel and 24 points ahead of Hamilton. 4 drivers could win the world title at the final round. A battle like this hadn't been seen in years, and something else that would happen that weekend, where the possibility of it hadn't even been considered before, was Abu Dhabi was actually exciting. Alonso qualified 3rd behind Vettel on pole and Hamilton in 2nd, but crucially ahead of Webber, who was down in 5th. Mark was the main threat, and after the race start and a scary crash between Michael Schumacher and Vittorio Liuzzi brought out a safety car, Ferrari decided to bring Alonso into the pits early, and this covered off the threat to Webber, who also pit, but Vettel and Hamilton stayed out. Hamilton basically had to win and have none of the other title contenders score, so he wasn't really someone to worry about, but Vettel was, and as Alonso was stuck behind the car he used to drive, the Renault Vitaly Petrov, Seb was looking increasingly likely that he might be able to snatch the title away from Alonso and Ferrari. The Renault had very good traction out of the corners, making it very hard for Fred to pass him, and the failed move where he went off the track proved that. When Vettel did box, he crucially came out ahead of Petrov and comfortably from there went on to take the win, and with Alonso still unable to pass the Renault the world title. Seb became the first driver since James Hunt in 1976 to win the world title without leading the championship at any other stage than the last round. Fernando would have to try it all over again in 2011, but it simply wasn't meant to be. With a combination of Red Bull and Sebastian Vettel dominance and a car that lacked aerodynamic grip from Ferrari meant that Fernando was only able to win 1 race all season at the British Grand Prix. A controversial win once again, as for 1 race only the FIA banned blown diffusers, and all of a sudden Ferrari were very competitive. Alonso ended the season 4th in the championship with 257 points, but as we always get told, next year is Ferrari's year, right? 2012 was simply the greatest season in F1 history, and Alonso's story that year is a big part of that. The Ferrari of 2012 had the pace of a Fiat 500 from 1972, and the car was tricky to drive. They looked woeful in pre-season testing, and at the first race of the season in Melbourne, they qualified 12th and 16th. McLaren, on the other hand, looked rapid, with Hamilton taking pole and Jenson Button taking the win. But at a wet race in Malaysia, fortunes would change massively for the Scuderia as Fernando found himself in the lead and survived a late charge from Sergio Perez, who was on a brilliant strategy to somehow take the win. After 7 different winners in the first 7 races of the season, there were only 3 points separating Hamilton, Alonso and Vettel. The 5th race of those 7, Alonso could have won in Spain, but Lord and Maldonado's existence put a stop to that. But at the European Grand Prix in Valencia, the 2nd home race of the season for Fernando, he would go from 11th on the grid to 2nd, which then became 1st after Vettel's alternator decided to stop working, and Alonso would go on to win his home race and become the first repeat winner of 2012. It was a very emotional win for Alonso as he couldn't hold back the tears on the podium and took the lead for Drivers' Championship. 2nd place at Silverstone, another win at Hockenheim, and 5th in Hungary saw him go into summer break 40 points ahead of Mark Webber. The car was definitely getting much stronger and being developed more as the season went on, but Fernando's driving was just incredible. But when F1 returned after the summer break for the Belgian Grand Prix, we all know what happened. One of the most famous and scariest crashes in recent F1 memory, where Alonso was right in the middle of it through no fault of his own. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and after a strong race from Vettel, coming from the mid-pack to finish 2nd, the lead was now just 24 points. But Monza undid all of that damage from Spa, as Seb had to retire again with a mechanical issue, and Alonso finished 3rd, putting the gap back up to 37 points over Lewis Hamilton this time. But his consistency could do nothing about what was about to come from Sebastian Vettel. 4 races, 4 wins, 100 points. And with Fernando being taken out the first corner of the Japanese Grand Prix, the gap after India was now 13 points, but in Vettel's favour. Abu Dhabi looked like the perfect scenario for Alonso to take back the lead of the championship, after Vettel was demoted to the back of the grid for a fuel irregularity, but he went from the pit lane to joining Alonso on the podium, with Fernando only gaining 3 points in the championship fight. The inaugural Grand Prix at the Circuit of the Americas saw Massa out-qualify Alonso, but in order to get him onto the clean side of the grid, Ferrari broke the seal on Massa's gearbox, giving him a 5-place grid penalty. Just Ferrari things. And Fernando had gone to finish 3rd from 7th on the grid, with Vettel finishing 2nd, just 6 tenths behind Hamilton. The title would be decided at the final round in Brazil at Interlagos, and what happened next made this, in my opinion, the greatest race of all time. As a Sebastian Vettel fan, you can imagine my reaction when he collided with Bruno Senna at turn 4 and fell down to last place. I thought it was all done, especially when Alonso overtook Massa and Webber to go up to 3rd place, the position he needed if Seb didn't score any points. But what followed was a champion's drive from Vettel, recovering to at one point being right behind Alonso. But after the radio stopped working on Vettel's side of the garage, causing a pit stop disaster, the title was once again in the hands of the Ferrari driver, as he moved back to 2nd place after Lewis Hamilton and Nico Hülkenberg collided and his teammate let him through. But it wasn't enough, as Vettel would finish in 6th place, and with that result become the youngest ever 3-time world champion, an achievement which would have gone to either driver. The greatest season ended with one of the greatest finales. They both would have deserved the title, because while Alonso did have the slower car, it was also much more reliable than the Red Bull of Vettel. But let's move on to 2013. Could this be Alonso's year? No. 2 wins in China and his home race in Spain were the highlights, but Vettel was more dominant than ever, winning 13 races, taking his 4th world title in India, and won every single race after the summer break. There was a feeling that Alonso's patience was starting to run out with Ferrari, but there was one more hope for 2014, the new V6 turbo hybrid power units. Could this be the year Ferrari finally got it all together and could give Fernando the world championship winning car that he deserved? No. But this time, it's a really big no. The power unit was woeful, with very bad drivability and not much power, and the car turned about as well as a Pio Cruise's boat. 2 podiums all year was what Ferrari managed, with Alonso picking up both of them. And his patience finally ran out, so much so that he went back to McLaren for the 2015 season, as they embarked on a new journey with Honda power and were looking to climb their way back up to the front of the grid after 2 disappointing seasons. And well, it certainly was a journey. If you thought the Ferrari 2014 power unit was bad, the 2015 Honda power unit was effectively just as powerful as the Honda Jazz hybrid. But Japanese reliability was there, right? Absolutely not. You would think the engine was made in Birmingham, not Japan. But while all these jokes are well and good, McLaren had to take a big share of the blame for the issues. They told Honda to build a power unit that would fit into their MP430 car, not the other way around, and any manufacturer would find this difficult. Also, Honda only started work on their power unit in 2013, whereas for the dominant Mercedes power unit, the development for that started in 2010, so they were always going to be behind. The season is probably best described via various team radio messages from Alonso, such as GP2 engine, GP2, driving with this, looking like amateurs, and many more hits from the team radio charts. But this brought into question, is Alonso toxic? And is he partly responsible for teams underperforming? The team he just left, Ferrari, were flying high with Sebastian Vettel, and by 2017 they were building title challenging cars. Obviously the strategy, there's just no saving them, but the cars were doing alright. But for McLaren, in 2017 things were just as bad, arguably even worse. 2016 was a bit of an improvement, but still way off where they should be. And it's not just a one-off. McLaren won the 2008 title with Lewis Hamilton after Fernando left. And as we will get into soon, this happened twice. 2018 started off well with a 5th place finish in Australia, but that was as good as it got. And I remember very well how bad of an environment that McLaren team looked. A complete contrast to the team we know and love now. In the summer break of 2018, it was announced that Alonso would leave Formula 1 at the end of the season, but he was open to coming back one day. He wanted to try various other motorsport categories, and he certainly did that. He was already doing it in 2017, when he raced in the Indy 500 for the first time instead of racing in the Monaco Grand Prix. Fernando was running in 5th place, but his Honda engine conked out near the end. The irony in that. In his final season in Formula 1 in 2018, he won the 24 Hours of Le Mans with Toyota and repeated the feat again in 2019, winning the World Endurance Championship in the process. And he became the first driver ever to be F1 World Champion and World Endurance Champion. There was also Alonso's 24 Hours of Daytona victory at the start of 2019, but his return to Indianapolis didn't go to plan at all. Entering with McLaren for just the Indy 500, they failed to qualify for the event, and he would have to wait another year to try and claim Motorsport's Triple Crown: Monaco, Le Mans, and Indy. Fernando did attempt the Dakar in 2020, finishing in 13th place, and when he returned to the Indy 500 for the third time, he actually qualified, but only finished 21st due to clutch issues that slowed him pulling away after pit stops. And here we are now, January 2021. Fernando is set to return to Formula 1 with Alpine, and his comeback has generated a lot of hype. We will have to wait to see how it goes, but I wish him all the best for what he says is definitely his last 2 seasons in Formula 1. If he can tone the toxicity down, he and Alpine will be ones to watch. I predicted he will get a podium this season, so I apologise if he has a shocker and I jinxed it. Thank you for watching this video. It's been a very long one, but I've really enjoyed making it. If you did enjoy it, I'd really appreciate you liking it and subscribing, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. Until next time, goodbye.